After 12 years, my cheating wife who abandoned me in the hospital is now begging for forgiveness. 12 years. 12 long, painful years have passed since the day my life changed in ways I never imagined. I've often thought about that period in my life. But it still feels like a bad dream, something distant. Something that couldn't have happened to me. Yet it did. The woman I once trusted with everything. The woman I loved more than anything in the world. Shattered my life when I needed her the most. Her name was Emily. We had been married for 6 years by the time it all fell apart. It wasn't a perfect marriage. But whose is? We had our share of arguments. Our ups and downs. But I thought we had a bond that was strong enough to withstand whatever life threw at us. I believed in us. In the life we had built together. But in the end, my belief was misplaced. It all started with an accident. A freak accident that left me in the hospital for weeks. My body broken in ways that would take months to heal. I had been in a car crash, a head-on collision with a drunk driver on a rainy night. The details of the accident are fuzzy. I remember the sound of shattering glass, the crunch of metal, and the pain that followed. But not much else. When I woke up in the hospital, groggy and disoriented, I expected to see Emily by my side. Her face the first thing I would see. But she wasn't there. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she hadn't gotten the call yet. Or maybe she was on her way. But as the hours turned into days, her absence became more than just noticeable, it became unbearable. I had friends visit, family who sat with me through the pain, doctors and nurses checking in regularly. But Emily was nowhere to be found. Days passed, and then a week, still nothing. I remember lying in that hospital bed, staring at the sterile white ceiling, wondering what had happened. We had argued before. Sure, we had gone through rough patches like any couple. But this felt different. I couldn't understand why she hadn't come. Why she wasn't there when I needed her most. My mind raced with possibilities. Each one worse than the last. It wasn't until the second week of my hospitalization that I finally heard from her. She didn't come in person. Instead, I received a short, emotionless text message. I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. Those words felt like a dagger to my chest. I read them over and over again, trying to make sense of what was happening. I'm leaving. It didn't make any sense. We had been through tough times before. But she had never given up on us. I had always believed that we were stronger than whatever life threw at us. But now, lying in a hospital bed, helpless and broken, I realized just how wrong I was. I tried calling her, texting her, begging her to explain, but she never responded. She disappeared from my life as if she had never existed, leaving me to heal from both my physical injuries and the emotional wreckage she left behind. My family tried to support me, to be there for me, but nothing could fill the void that Emily's absence created. The weeks that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I had to learn to walk again, to regain my strength, all while grappling with the overwhelming pain of betrayal. Every day was a battle. I had moments of anger, moments of despair, moments where I didn't think I could keep going. But I did. Somehow, I did. I was discharged from the hospital after several weeks. But the real recovery took much longer. My body healed, but my heart didn't. Emily's departure left a scar that no amount of physical therapy could fix. I went through the motions of daily life, but I was a shell of the person I used to be. I couldn't understand how someone I had shared so much with could just abandon me like that. Without a word, without an explanation. Eventually, I found out the truth. It came through mutual friends. Whispers and rumors that finally reached my ears. Emily hadn't just left me, she had left me for someone else. While I was lying in a hospital bed, fighting to heal, she had been seeing another man. And when things got too hard, when the weight of my accident became too much for her to handle, she had taken the easy way out. She had walked away from our marriage, from our life together, and into the arms of someone else. The betrayal was more than I could bear. I felt like I had been punched in the gut, like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I had spent weeks lying in that hospital bed, wondering what I had done wrong, wondering how I could fix things. But now I knew the truth. There was nothing I could have done. Emily had made her choice. And it didn't include me. For months, I wallowed in anger and bitterness. I replayed every moment of our marriage in my head, trying to understand where it had all gone wrong. I cursed her name. I hated her for what she had done to me. But eventually, I realized that carrying that anger was only hurting me. Emily was gone. She had moved on. And if I ever wanted to heal, I needed to do the same. It wasn't easy, but I slowly started to rebuild my life. I threw myself into work, into hobbies, into anything that would keep my mind occupied. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and tried to find joy in the little things again. It took years, but I eventually found a sense of peace. I stopped thinking about Emily every day. The pain didn't disappear, but it dulled, becoming a part of my past rather than the thing that defined my present. 12 years. It had been 12 years since the accident. 12 years since Emily had left. I had built a new life. A life without her. I wasn't the same person I had been back then. I had grown. I had changed. I had learned to live with the scars, both physical and emotional, and I thought I had put that chapter of my life behind me. But then, out of nowhere, she came back. It started with an email. A name I hadn't seen in years suddenly appeared in my inbox. And for a moment, I thought it was a mistake. But as I opened the email, I realized it wasn't a mistake at all. It was from Emily. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." I stared at the email for what felt like hours, my mind racing with a mix of emotions I hadn't felt in years. Anger, confusion, curiosity. What could she possibly have to say to me after all this time? After 12 years of silence. Why now? The email was long, filled with apologies and explanations. She wrote about how she had been overwhelmed after my accident, how she had felt trapped and unable to cope with the idea of being a caregiver. She admitted that she had left me for another man, but she claimed that it hadn't been about him. It had been about her own fear and insecurity. She wrote about how she had regretted her decision every day since, how her relationship with the other man had fallen apart, and how she had spent the last decade trying to build a life for herself but had never been able to forget me. She wanted forgiveness. She wanted to talk, to explain herself, to make amends. She said that she knew she didn't deserve it, but she hoped that after all these years, I could find it in my heart to forgive her. I didn't know what to feel. I had spent years trying to forget Emily, trying to move on from the pain she had caused me. And now, here she was, asking for forgiveness as if the last 12 years had been nothing more than a brief interlude. As if she could just walk back into my life and undo the damage she had done. I closed the email without replying. I wasn't ready to confront the flood of emotions her words had stirred up. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking about Emily more and more. Her words echoed in my mind, pulling me back to a time in my life that I had worked so hard to leave behind. I thought about the love we had shared, the dreams we had built together, and the way she had destroyed it all in an instant. But I also thought about the person I had become since then. I had grown stronger, more resilient. I had learned to live without her. I knew that I had to make a choice. I could hold on to the anger, the bitterness that had defined me for so long, or I could let it go. I could forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. So, I sat down at my computer and typed out a response. It wasn't long, and it wasn't filled with the same emotion that her email had been. I told her that I had moved on, that I had built a new life for myself, and that I didn't need her apologies. I told her that I forgave her, but that forgiveness didn't mean we could go back to the way things were. It didn't mean that we could have a relationship again. It just meant that I was finally letting go of the weight I had carried for so long. I hit send and felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was over. The chapter was finally closed. 12 years had passed, and in that time, I had learned one of the hardest lessons life can teach. Some things, no matter how painful, are better left in the past. Emily had been a part of my life, but she wasn't part of my future. After sending the email, I sat in silence for a long time, processing everything. The weight I had carried for so many years, anger, betrayal, grief, began to lift. Little by little. It didn't vanish all at once, but I could feel it loosening its grip on me. I realized that forgiving Emily wasn't about her. It was about freeing myself from the prison I had built around my pain. I had spent so much time focused on what I had lost that I hadn't fully embraced what I had gained, my resilience, my independence, and my ability to heal. In the following days, life continued as it always did, but I felt lighter. I wasn't haunted by thoughts of Emily anymore. The closure I had been searching for all those years had finally arrived. Not through a dramatic confrontation or a face-to-face apology, but through a simple decision to let go. I had built a life I was proud of. One that didn't revolve around the scars of my past. I had friends. a career I loved, and a sense of peace I hadn't thought possible in the years following the accident and Emily's abandonment. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my life was truly mine, not defined by what had happened to me, but by what I had created in spite of it. Emily didn't respond to my email, and I didn't expect her to. Our story had reached its natural end. Whatever she did with her life now was no longer my concern. I wished her peace, but I didn't need her to be part of my world to find my own. Looking back, I realized that life is unpredictable and messy, and people make mistakes, some more devastating than others. But I had survived it all, and I had come out the other side stronger. My heart still carried the memories of what I had been through, but those memories no longer defined me. I wasn't the man lying broken in a hospital bed, abandoned by the person he loved. I was someone who had rebuilt, piece by piece, and found strength in the journey. The twist in my life wasn't that Emily came back, seeking forgiveness. It was that I had already forgiven myself. I had forgiven myself for trusting her, for loving her, for being vulnerable, and for the years I spent trying to understand why she left. I realized that it wasn't my fault, and I didn't need her or anyone else to tell me that. My healing was my own, and it was complete. As I moved forward, I took with me the lessons I had learned, that forgiveness is not about the other person, but about setting yourself free. That love, even when it ends in heartbreak, is worth experiencing, and most importantly, that the life I had now, one filled with joy, peace, and hope, was built on the foundation of my resilience. And that was more than enough for me.